So my talk today is on automation with OS 10. It's not September yet, so I can't put Mac OS up yet. A lot of us have been doing repeated tasks on our computers. We take files, we rename them, we take photos, we do the same kind of things to them, size them with 1024 by 768 and so on, all these things. And after a while you go, isn't there a better way to do that? So my background, my name's Kirschen Seah. I'm a software engineer, GCAT. I've been using Apple since 1978. First, I had an Apple II back then. I'm a crazy bicyclist. I once raced in a park that was about 2 miles west of here. Okay, and Alison Sheridan made me say this: what's the problem to be solved? There's always a problem to be solved, and it's always repeating the same number of steps, the same things that you do. I have this set of photographs in my directory, and I want to rename them because somebody's given me photos from Macstock this year. I've got photos from several people. They all have different names. Can I rename them? Yes, you can. You take your cursor, you point it to the first file, type the name, copy that, paste it 300 times. So is there an easier way to do that? And indeed there is. There is this secret tool that Apple's made probably since Lion, I think. And it's called Automator. That's Auto. And it's your robotic action pal. This is what I'm going to call it. It's located in applications. So if you open your applications folder on your Mac, you'll find Auto somewhere near the top. It's named Automator. And it creates these little files, these little sets of actions called workflows. So Automator creates workflows. So first thing up is when you launch Automator, you get this window come up, and that's essentially where you build these workflows. Now, the key thing in the word workflow is the word flow. So we're going to talk about how things flow from one action to another. And here's what the window looks like. This is what happens when you start it up. Actually, it comes up with a little selector pane that asks you to choose, do you want to make a workflow? Do you want to make a service? Do you want to make an application? I'll show that in a minute, and we'll talk about that. But once you've dismissed that and you've got a blank document, what you have is the library. That's a list of all the different actions you can do on a Mac. You've got calendar actions, contact actions. If you're a developer and have installed the developer tools, you'll get a set of developer actions, actions on documents, files, and folders, and so on. The list is there. And I also wanted to make sure that applications that you may add, for example, like Aperture, Photoshop, and so on, they can add actions of their own. So you might see special customized actions there. So I clicked on Utilities, for example, and the next panel to the right of the library are the actions. So these are the things you can do. For example, I've clicked on Utilities, and you can see we can do things like ask for confirmation, add prefix string. That's something I wrote because I needed something to add little strings to the front of another string. But the built-in includes things like ask for confirmation, puts up a little dialog box. You can click cancel or OK. It'll tell you if you click cancel or OK. And then you can carry on from there. Burn a disk, choose from a list. Wait for user action, view the results. Take a screenshot as part of the actions you can do. So those are the actions. And the next pane, the ones on the bottom, is the description. It tells you what the action is. So you can see this is the add prefix string action. It gives you information about what the action does. It tells you what version it is. It tells you where it came from. I was experimenting in writing actions, so I wrote one just to try. And here's where you would go if you wanted to know more information about the action that you've clicked and highlighted up there in the action pane. So you've got the description, sort of like help. And then the next one up here is the workflow. That's the pane where you would drag all these actions over, build a linked chain of actions to create a workflow. So think of it as the flow. You've got an action, it's got an input coming in, it does something to it, and then it's got something coming out. And how do I know what goes in and what comes out? Well, if you look carefully at the bottom of in the description, you'll see it says input, tells you what can come in. Result, it says what comes out of the action. And then what the action does is listed above the name in the description. So their workflow is a sequence of actions. So how do we get actions here? Well, you just drag them over. So, before that, how do you run actions? There's a little set of buttons on the top right of the screen so you can see record. This is interesting. I've not tried it myself, but I will want to experiment with one of these days. Automator lets you do the watch what I do mode. You click record and you do stuff on the Mac and it builds a sequence of actions. AppleScript used to do that. I've not tried it, but when I go home, it'll probably be the first thing I want to try when I get home. So you can build a sequence of actions. You can run them. There's a little run button with the arrow on the right over there. Stop the actions and step one action at a time. So if you want to figure out what went wrong, you can step through the actions one at a time. And then finally, on the bottom is the log. So each time an action runs, a little green check arrow shows up, and it says this action completed successfully. So you know exactly what each action has done. It'll tell you how long each action took as well. So next up. Okay, these are the actions you can create. The most common one is the workflow. The document icon has WFlow on it. And these are actions that can only run within Automator. So you are developing an action, you can create a workflow, you can run it within Automator. But if you wanted it to be a double-clickable application, you would create an application. That would create a workflow that you can double-click, and it will do all the steps in a workflow. But there's another advantage of an application. You can drag and drop files on it, and it will do things to those files. So an application is a workflow that if you double-click, it behaves like a regular Macintosh application. A service. This is pretty cool. What a service does is, think about, you've selected several files in the Finder, you right-click, and somewhere near the bottom you see a little menu item called Services. You can make Automator actions that live in services that would act on the files you've selected. So if you wanted to do, maybe take all these pictures and make them 640 by 480, change them into JPEGs with super high compression, you can do it that way with a right click. So those are services. I've not tried print plugins, I've not tried any of the rest, but the first three are the most common ones that I've used. Workflows, applications, and services. So we'll just go look at an example workflow. So here's the thing we want to do. We've got a bunch of files on our desktop. Everybody's given each one all their photos they've taken at Macstock. But you wanted to rename them with Macstock 2016-1, -2, up to, just numerically number them. So you could click on each file, name one, copy, paste, but there are several hundred files. Very painful to do it manually. So let's look at how we will be able to rename these things using a workflow. So you open up Automator. The first thing you see is this Automator file dialog box. And one thing nice, this is the cool part, a lot of, including me, overlook. Up in the top left-hand side where your favorites and so on are, the first item on top is iCloud. And that means I can create a workflow that will exist on all my Macs. Do it on one, and it will move it to all your Macs. That's pretty nifty. And then you could, if you've got Dropbox, you can throw it in there and so on. But to me, that's the most powerful thing. You can put it on your Mac. If ever they get Automator on your iPhone, yeah, iCloud Drive actually does live on your iPhone as well, but you can't do anything with it. So what you would do is you would click on New Document, and the pane comes up. And for now, let's choose a workflow. So it's the initial thing that's highlighted. You select workflow, which means you can run it from within Automator. And my usual development technique with Automator is I develop everything using a workflow, and at the very end, I'll save it as an application or as a service. So that way you can keep them separate. You can keep developing things using a workflow. But if you know you want to make an application, you can always select that. It doesn't really matter. Automator can open Automator applications. So in this case, we're going to create a workflow. So that's pre-highlighted. And then we click on Choose. And then you get this, the Automator window. Now, remember the scenario. We're going to take a bunch of files, and we're going to rename them. So the use case is I've got a Finder window open. I have already selected the files. And then when I run this action, this workflow, I want all those files renamed somehow to consistent names. So where would you think an action that works on files and folders might live? Files and folders. But if you didn't know, what would you do? You would click up on library, and there up on the top is a search box. If you look down, actions, variables, there's a little search box. You can type some words in there, and hopefully you can find the action you want. But if you have an idea, you can narrow down by going to the library and choosing the sub-selection in there, the group, and then you can still search within the group. So we want to get the list of files in the Finder that you've selected. So if you go down through the list, you'll see there's an item called Get Selected Finder Items. So we're going to focus there. Get Selected Finder Items. You take that, you drag it over. And if you're on, actually a lot of people have trackpads. The reason I like the trackpad is I don't like poking on the trackpad and then moving my finger, which falls off the other trackpad. I use a 3-finger drag. You can enable that in System Preferences, the 3-finger drag. So if you do a 3-finger drag on an object, it will move, and then you can click to drop it. So that way it saves the bother of keeping a finger down all the time on the pad. So I click on the Get Selected Finder Items, I drag it across, and there it shows up right on top. Now, there's a little disclosure triangle which I've got open. It says, and then you've got results and options. For Get Selected Finder Items, if you click on results, it'll show a little, let me get a little closer there. So you see results and options. And right now, all it does is it's going to grab all the files you selected in the Finder, and then the next thing you do is you grab Rename Finder Items, you drag it up there. This thing comes up. You go, whoa, what's going on? It says, this action will change the names of the Finder files. So it asks you kindly, do you want to copy the files before you rename them, just to be safe? So it's up to you. You can say, don't add a copy to make a backup, or just simply add them. Add that time. We're gonna say, don't worry about copying for now. We made a backup before. These files, we'll rename them. We have a copy of them somewhere else. So edit links, you can see that there's a little triangle down at the top from Get Selected Finder Items, and a little bump on the Rename Finder Items. That's a connection. So the flow is, I've got these list of files, they're going to flow into Rename. And you can see the top of it says Rename Finder Items, add date or time. So the default one is we're going to just add a date of timestamp on it. And you can see in the example what it would look like. It would look like item name and then the date stamp. You could customize that. We just want to rename it. So if you click on add date or time, you can select make sequential, and then you want to rename it holiday snaps. So that's the name of my file. It'll be holiday snaps -1 -2 -3. So whatever you selected in the Finder, they're going to rename them, no matter how many you've selected. And how do you run it? Well, here we go. You select some files in the Finder, you switch back to Automator, and then you press the Run button. That's it. All your 300 files have been renamed. All your 300 files have been converted to 640 by, if you choose the right other actions, you can rename them, compress them differently with JPEGs and everything. Maybe you want to post that on your website, but you want a smaller image. This is the thing for you. And then you click on the Run button and woof, off it goes. A couple of FAQ things. I mentioned about the search box. There it is, right up there. If you don't know what you're looking for, that's a good place to search for items. Debugging. I usually use the log. That helps a bit. Another thing that helps me is there's an action down in Utilities called View Results. If you put it in the middle, for example, after give me the selected files, it'll give you a list of the selected file names. So you can see that. Is that what we want? And usually I build the actions a bit at a time. So if I want to make sure that I selected the right files, I put the Get Finder Items up there, and then put the Show Selected Files. Run that. If that's what I want, put another action after that. More things. If you want to add an action in the middle, you drag and drop it. You want to reorder an action, you drag and drop it up and down. You want to delete an action, you click, there will be a blue box on the action, and you just press delete, the action goes away. There are lots of things to explore. For example, there are actions which get run which are specific to some applications, like Aperture has got some actions in there. I know that I have an audio editor, audio capture tool that's got actions thrown in as well. So you can add applications, and they themselves would add actions to Automator. People can also write Automator actions. I've written a few just to try. There are variables as well. For example, if you want to do a multi-step thing, and I want to do this actions, but save the name of the files and then reuse the name of the file later, or ask the user for some input and then use the input later, you could use variables for that. There's also dialog boxes you could show to have people select yes or no. Notifications, you can pop a little notification on the top to show the text. And then you can use Apple script and command line shell scripts if you really want to integrate deep functionality. And anybody got any questions? Just a minute, I'm going to put the resources up front for people to have a look at. Yes?
Are they reversible? Usually when you take an action in another app, it'll say undo under the edit menu.
Right. This unfortunately does not undo. If you rename the files, that's it. That's why they give you the prompt. Do you want to copy and make a backup? My advice is make a backup before you before you try anything that you know might break. Yeah, I have a question from. Okay. Any other questions? All right. These are some of the resources. I would also search on Apple's website. I think there's something that they may have to talk about how Automator works. But these are a few. Automator.us dates from back in Leopard, I think. And talks a bit about how you would hook things up together. So these are really good resources. I'm going to post the presentation as well up on my website, Free Range Coder. So all right, I'm going to wait for a minute if everybody wants to take that down. And I'm going to switch to the next slide for contact information. And for the demo, come to the deep dive. I'll show a couple of demos. Now, I did one interesting Automator action because I use SuperDuper to back up my stuff. I have one drive dock. So drive dock has a drive that contains my, and this is a real life case, contains my time machine backup. So I needed a sequence of stuff that would, and I found myself doing this, manually eject all the drives, double click to launch SuperDuper, plug the new drive in, launch SuperDuper, start the backup. So I created an action that would eject all my drives, eject all the drives for time machine. I had 3 partitions. Then I physically turn it off, pull the drive while the action pauses for about a minute, take the new drive, put it in, turn it on, and then have it launch SuperDuper. It's a thing I do every week, so time does add up. And that's a real-life use case that I use Automator for every week. All right, if there's nothing else, that's my website. Feel free to drop by. And demo coming up. Thank you.